The two biggest stories of this week have nothing to do with people who are actually going to end up playing in Indian Wells. The Simona Halep ruling, where she's immediately eligible all of a sudden, where we thought she was going to be gone for 3 more years, and Rafa Nadal withdrawing, possibly leading to the opinion. It's my opinion that I don't think he'll ever probably play a sanctioned hardcourt match. Again, obviously, you don't know what you don't know, but both those things concerning. Let's start with Halep. Where do things stand currently? I think we all know that kind of she's back, but how did this all go down?
Yeah, imagine this week. We had this conversation a week ago. We said, boy, I don't know. We may never see her again. She had this appeal, but 4 years is a big ban, and the facts look, there's some questionable facts. And hey, CAS rules on her appeal and see in Miami. So she goes from perhaps never playing tennis ever again to you are immediately eligible. Stretch, pack your bags, and we'll see you at the next big event. This CAS panel essentially heard her appeal and said, we don't know for sure. Odds are, the probability, this was not taken intentionally. This was not taken doping. You bear some responsibility. You didn't do everything right, but we believe the ban should have been 9 months. Well, big problem here. She's already served more than 15. The real story here is just tennis's anti-doping protocols. And look, I think we need to back up real quick and just say this is tricky business. This by nature is going to be problematic. There are going to be discrepancies. I mean, this is ugly stuff. We all want a clean sport, right? We all want a level playing field, but by definition, this is very, very complicated. None of us are scientists. None of us are having access to the full testimony and the full science. That said, there's something really problematic when every single time a player is sanctioned, it gets knocked way down on appeal. You compare this to the legal system. What would happen if every time a judge gave a decision, the appeals court said, you are way wrong, and that 6-year sentence should actually have been 9 months? That's a problem, and I think that is one of the big takeaways here. I heard from a number of players who, it wasn't necessarily about positive tests, but about discrepancies, or they had over-the-counter medication. It took them 90 days, EpiPens. I mean, the most basic. There clearly is something with the infrastructure that is really problematic. Way too many of these positives are knocked down on appeal. And here's Simona Halep, former number 1 player, Wimbledon champion. And, a week ago, we don't know what happens to her career. And as of today, she'll be playing in Miami. So strange set of circumstances, something tennis needs to address. I guess the big picture is great that there's an appeals process, and great that on balance, Halep was judged not to have doped intentionally. But this one really leaves a bitter taste.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of become, the initial ruling has almost become like an opening offer, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're going to give you 4, and it seems like now it's like, okay, but how much am I actually gonna end up serving? In Halep's case, you see a lot. I think she's generated enough goodwill over the years, and she definitely has a lot of prominent figures in the sport behind her and wishing her well. It doesn't feel like people think that she did it intentionally. My thing is basically like, she would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? It's like, are you going to put that at risk for something that your coach gives you? I don't think she would do that intentionally, not because I know her or because I can stand by her character. Like, I don't know her well enough. It's just, it's a weird time to put that at risk when you're already 30 years old, have Hall of Fame in the bank already. And so my parts of sympathy come from, I would be shocked if you would choose to put that at risk. And also with the Mouratoglou of things and influence and, who you trust and who you don't. But also on the other side, and two things can be true, is people are like, see, vindication, all this, but she still tested positive for something that you aren't supposed to take, and that is illegal. Are we allowed to have nuance where it's like, I'm happy to see her back, but also she didn't get, vindicated to where she was completely innocent either. She had a banned substance in her body. They just decided it was already time served, right?
Yeah, now slow down. This word nuance you use, it rings a faint bell from another era. No, I think that's a really good point. I would just caution one thing, which is, I don't think, we all think of doping as like, oh, it's the muscle-bound 18-year-old that sort of wants the edge. I mean, a lot of times, Barry Bonds was a first ballot Hall of Famer before he started doping. A lot of the players that get popped are players at the end of their career. They need faster recovery. They want one big push. So I don't think we ought to read too much into the timing. I think in some cases it's very consistent with what we've seen in other sports, that older athletes are the ones doping. I mean, for Pat, you mentioned Patrick Moritani. I mean, sure, you have the supplement that is so rare you've got to get. This is like you go to GNC and pick this thing up. You've got to go to some lab in Canada, and yet you don't end up having the thing tested in advance of having your athlete take
or
it.
declare
Simona
it, right?
Halep, or declare
Yeah, or declare it.
Exactly.
That's the big one for me, is or declare it.
Exactly. So, I mean, look, it's great that she can play again. I don't think, I have to assume Cass knows what they're talking about and has access to a lot more evidence than anyone on Twitter, anyone in the media, or any other player when they say on probability she probably wasn't doping intentionally. That said, there's still some unanswered questions here. So, it's nice we'll see Simona Halep again. I think you're right. I mean, reputations matter. And, this is not, part of me feels bad. It's Indian Wells. We're having a lot of discussion about this. This is not a particularly pleasant story. I guess the good news is Simona Halep's back. She's more than served her time, and hopefully this will lead to some sort of real examination about tennis's anti-doping, because something's gone way off the tracks here.
Yeah, and also the thing that's striking, and then we'll kind of move on with it, is, okay, it's a 9-month, if the exact same thing is in your system, 9 months versus 4 years, the variance is just so extreme between the two. It feels like there needs to be kind of a closer situation when you're making a judgment on something that we will never know is factual, right? Intent. Now, 9 months versus 4 years, it feels like they should be kind of closer bedfellows at the beginning and at the end of it. But I personally am happy to see Simona out the other side, just because it's hard to ban someone for 4 years when you don't know, and someone has generally been a good steward in the sport. And frankly, I was just kind of mad that she was having to pay the total bill. And maybe that's a dumb take by me, but that's important to me, and I had sympathy for her for that reason. It wasn't she didn't do this alone, and it's an individual sport. I understand that. We are all responsible with what goes into our body. It is absolutely also a team sport. Your team, the people around you, it's all consuming for everyone that you have on salary, and you at some point have to trust fall into those people around you. And I just feel like she chose the wrong place to fall, unfortunately. But we will move on. It'll be a fascinating storyline. One of the things that I don't know that I could have done, I would have been pretty depressed if they would have boxed me out for 4 years, is stay in shape and train as if this result was around the corner, which she apparently has done and will be ready to go in Miami. That's impressive in its own right. Hope springs eternal, I guess, but it'll be interesting to see her back. I personally am happy. I don't know if that's the right emotion. It's just what I feel. It'll be a good storyline moving forward.